Yeah, that's right. This is your friend Carlz. Let's like I think I added a little bit too many books this week. But anyways, welcome. This is another week of me talking about comic books. This is another one of those where I sneak in some not things that I didn't meant to do, but things that I wanted to do. There are a couple of reviews of ongoing volumes besides the classic recommendations, of course. Overall, like I haven't seen hot news in a long time, even though there's a lot of talk about the upcoming Armageddon, and but I talked about it enough, and of course I'm hyped enough. If I can make a quick comment about the previous Captain America issue, I think honestly they are saving the more controversial things for last. And I happened to see this Instagram story or a reel about someone that I don't follow. It wasn't my recommended, but they keep like the whole point of their reel was DC is way more political than Marvel, and that's quite an interesting discussion to have. I thought at that moment because of course people are still thinking about absolute Batman fighting basically what was ice and just breaking a policeman arm in half like fuck you fascist, like it's still fresh in our minds that absolute Batman annual was so fucking good. But anyways, that's quite an interesting thing, especially thinking about the upcoming Avengers Armageddon and the whole setup that they are building between Wolverine, Captain America, and now Spider Man, but especially with Captain America. The last issue made me think that perhaps they're not gonna go that hard on it. The beginning of that run was highly political, but now that kind of like the size has been chosen and the mean bad guy became like a Marvel bad guy, basically with all the flair and whistles, woo woo. I don't know how hard they're gonna go, but we'll see when Armageddon happens in like a couple of months. I think. Let's hope we are alive to see it. But let's dive right into this week's recommendations because we are aplenty. We are back to Absolute Green Lantern first. Itoma Ra, the classic. Isn't Toma Ra? I always forget how you say his name. But out of the blue, Absolute Green Lantern got big. It was quite a surprise because we haven't really seen Joe Mulane. How do you even pronounce that name? I think it's like a southern US name, right? Like Louisiana or something. But we're finally going off to space, which is really funny because everybody criticized the Green Lantern trailer, the live action series, because there were no space or aliens in it, which is fucking funny. But in Absolute Green Lantern, we're finally apparently going off to space and see the other emotional spectrums. Out of all the Absolute series, I think Absolute Green Lantern has been the slowest compared to the scope of what the Green Lantern Corps are always are, basically. We're talking about like intergalactic police, whatever, right? And something of more of cosmic proportions than just a city or anything. So, how are they gonna tackle this? Is gonna be really important. As I've mentioned before, one of the big things about the absolute titles is that you get new, like quote unquote new, but like refurbished sort of scenarios for these classic heroes. So it's not. It doesn't mean that the Absolute Green Lantern is gonna be the same as the Green Lantern, just this big corps of police. Anything we don't know. So this is a really fun turning point to get into the story. For good or bad, the story of the main book itself hasn't been moving that fast. So like we haven't really seen Jo using her powers properly. It has begun with a lot of character building, relationship building between Jo. What's the name of the It's not Kyle Reiner. What is his name? Hal Jordan. The Hal Jordan. Like we have like most of the known Green Lantern characters, all with different roles, all with different personalities, but it has been mostly building about it. But now apparently we're going to the big scope of the universe and the emotional spectrum, which at the end of the day is the big thing about the Green Lantern, the emotional spectrum. So looking forward to this. Is it a good jumping point? I think it have counts as one, right? But it's been good anyway, so you might as well recommend the whole thing. Next, in Absolute Superman, we have been, well, in the previous issue, we were introduced to the Absolute Universe Black Adam. And I'm not a fan of Black Adam, nor Shazam for that matter. But it's gonna be cool to see what he does and who he is. Apparently, he's quite linked to the Lazarus. What is the name of the military guys with Ra's al Ghul? Lazarus, right? I'm really bad with names. I'm sorry, but the main baddies, they're basically associating themselves with Black Adam, and it's good that they didn't just release Absolute Black Adam and they made him part of Absolute Superman. I think, in kind of like a selfish way, I wish the Absolute Universe doesn't grow that fast. You know, it's good that they test run these characters in these books before releasing them into the wild. But the most fun thing about it, like overall, is that the press release clearly was playing words on the failed Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson phrase, now memed forever in the DC fandom, as this is gonna change the balance of power in the DC universe forever. Which is something The Rock said in one of those virtual events they had during the pandemic to promote Black Adam the movie, which of course ended up being just a failure. Personally, I don't think it's that bad of a movie, but of course it was a failure, and of course that doesn't matter anymore, and of course the balance of the DC universe never changed. So I think it was funny that they used it in the press release for a comic book. I hope it doesn't become like Black Adam's tagline, you know? But anyways, Absolute Superman, another delightful book, another amazing, interesting, and exciting new turn of events with the introduction of Absolute Black Adam. I think he might be like made of lightning or something. Next. This is as I said, an excuse for a review. With the Amazing Spider-Man 28, I'm gonna do a little review of the Death Spiral event between Venom, Spider-Man, and Carnage. As I've been saying the couple of times I recommended it during the run of the event, it was really mid. It really was. I think it was trying to build kind of like an emotional tension to eventually kind of like reach to the conclusion of the event, right? I don't want to spoil it, but of course it was about this serial killer that was aiming towards people who were related to Eddie Brock, Peter Parker, and Mary Jane Watson. For some reason, he knew all about them. Of course, he got bonded with Carnage, therefore he probably gets all of the information that Carnage has. But anyways, it's all about this serial killer, and throughout the whole event, it's all about them chasing him. And the fallout of an event like this, the fallout of facing such a personal, connected serial killer with such high stakes, it should have been felt right away. I mean, not necessarily hate is a strong word, but I don't like when they use events just as, like a seasoning or build up for whatever happened later in the book. So now we have all the sort of questions that could have been just one or a couple of issues, not months of it, which is a setup for Eddie Brock who is symbioteless. It's a setup for Venom because him and Mary Jane did something during the event that is clearly gonna mark them for the upcoming who knows how long. And we have Peter, who didn't have that much. Actually, I think Spider-Man was the less impacted one if we just count his new sort of relationships, or like the new state of his relationship, especially with Mary Jane and Venom. Of course, we have the fact that he bonded with Carnage, which is not a spoiler, it was all over the news. He bonded with Carnage, and of course, we have, as suspected, the big winner of the event, who was Carnage. Now, Carnage apparently has all the knowledge out of all of these characters, including what he got from Spiral Guy. I don't even remember his fucking name. You know, and he's out on the loose. And I don't know, man. Like, what really did happen in the event? I mean, they just killed like Eddie Brock's father. Like, who the fuck knew Eddie Brock's father still was a thing? The climax of the book, without spoiling too much, had the serial killer going for Peter's and Mary Jane's aunt, and which was kind of like the tension building for the event. But basically, like, the only impactful thing was that Eddie Brock died, and Paul, whatever his name was, died. Like, come on, man. Nobody gives a fuck about those characters. That's probably why they killed them. But anyway, it was a below mediocre event. Only setups, only ideas to be explored later, or, you know. So now we're looking forward to what, the Queen in Black event? You know, like, I don't know, it was a mediocre event. So I'm sort of forced to to recommend Spider-Man. I've said it before and I'll say it again. If you are into Marvel Comics, you are doomed to ask the most fundamental question: what is Spider-Man doing this week? If you are in any way interested in Marvel Comics, that is your mantra. So, in a good kind of like perspective, at least the event made it so we be interested in seeing what's going on with these characters in the future. But the event itself, nah, mediocre. Next. I want to praise once more the direction they took with the Gotham books. So in the new story arc for Batman, we have Major Poison Ivy with Commissioner Randall. I was gonna say Randy Savage, Vandal Savage. They are teaming up to take on the Bat Family, and as the title implies, in the cover of the new issue of Batman, one will fall. So one of the big questions that I've had since the All-In initiative began was, what is gonna be the Barbara Gordon in prison book about? So apparently it was all interconnected, and I shit you not, this has been so fun between the Gotham books, and it's not something that you see all the time. That's the thing. You almost always have this level of flexibility that will allow you to go wherever you want with the characters, do separate things even if it doesn't make sense. But this heavily implies that the one that will fall out of this new major initiative is going to be Barbara, which will lead directly into, what is the name of the book? Barbara Gordon Lockdown or something? I just hope it's not going to be like a Prison Break. I don't know. But it's great to see Babs in the front lines again, and this will lead directly to her story. The one bad thing, though, is that I'm not feeling the main Batman story going somewhere. The first story arc of the current run had Batman or maybe Bruce having a relationship with this doctor from Arkham Tower, and it had some sort of revelations on the character itself, because this new psychologist character was quite outgoing. It had Tim in it, and Tim had also its sort of revelation, but they removed Tim quite easily. I think the main Batman book is lacking a little bit of direction, like a clear direction. They obviously have a plan for the foreseeable future, but I wish they gave us more in the current run. You know, I wish it was a little bit more clear where they're going. It's not like the Secret Brother, or like this is gonna be a Bane story arc, a Riddler story arc. It's really strange. It feels more like a setup. It feels more like creating a world creating, than a basic story creating. Considering that Poison Ivy, it's more like a lead book story wise in this sense. But if it's gonna spread out, it's good to see it like that. Actually, it's even more interesting what's happening with Damian, and Damian as part of the Reign of the Superboy storyline. Like, they brought John, the kid John, from the past into the future. No, the past to the present, but it was brought by someone. But the future, it gets confusing. But the thing is, Damian is apparently going to do some interesting stuff there. But anyways, props to DC for making these interconnected Gotham stories, which I've been loving, even if they don't have the impact that one might want them to have. Next. This is, without a shadow of a doubt, the book of the week. Caught completely by surprise, Dynamite Entertainment has, I don't know if they had the IP, but anyways, it's Cartoon Network's Ben 10. This animated show, to me, I kind of liked it at the beginning. I thought the concept was cool, of this kid who found this alien watch which would allow him to turn into different kinds of creatures. I don't even know if Ben 10 is still going on. I have no idea. I saw like the first 10 episodes, maybe roughly the first season of the original show. And of course it was a kids show. When kids show have a little bit of an edge, that's when we adults, it's funny to call yourself an adult considering you are just a dumbass. But it had a little bit of an edge. It had some action. It had some mysteries around the aliens and the origins of it. It had some conspiracy, but it was a kid show, so it never went that hard. And that's when you lose interest. But since then, even if I haven't been following, I know enough that Ben 10 is now a big franchise. As I said, I don't know if the animation is still going on. I have no idea. But of course these are comic books, and of course the press release is really adamant on this being an 8-year sort of version of Ben 10. I don't think we're gonna see like fucking Ben doing drugs or something like that. Maybe the emo kid, there was like the emo kid, the friend of them, maybe the emo kid is gonna be on drugs, but whatever. I don't know how edgy it's gonna be, but I couldn't help but find it funny that even though the creators of Ben 10 are working in the title, is co-written by Joe Casey. So Joe Casey, I mean, how can you say? I don't want to say that he is completely an adult-oriented writer. That's not the point. But the first thing I ever read from him was the Image comic book Sex, which I end up reading. It's gonna sound stupid. Well, it's a stupid reason, because of the title. And not because I'm like, yeah, there's gonna be sex here, But I got into sex. I got into the book not from the beginning, like later, and I already knew that it was this really noir, dark oriented um, crime. Like, I don't know. The point is, this is not a writer that I would associate with fucking Ben 10. Okay, that's the thing. Of course, he's a writer. He's a smart guy. He's not gonna go all hardcore on fucking Ben 10. That's not gonna be the case. But it's interesting. It's interesting, and if you are into comic books and you've been like reading and being into comic books for so long, you have this idea of these adaptations of old IPs or new IPs. I've commented it when I've talked about Thundercats or Space Ghost, of many of the IPs that have been brought back in comic book form. There is a little bit of trope heavy approach to it, where you get, I don't know, we're gonna make this serious, so you take this character and turn him, as I said, into a drug addict, or as they did in one of the best sort of comic book edginess adaptations that I've seen in the past years, and I'm not ashamed to say it, the Captain Planet book. The Captain Planet book was a great update into seriousness and edginess of its titular characters. It just was. It was the natural way of making them into grown-ups and making them more interesting as characters. So anyways, let's see what they do with Ben 10, man. I haven't seen or read anything about Ben 10 since that first season of the animation, so who knows? Next. Just a quick reminder that there's this one shot about Cassian Andor that we're gonna connect the end of the series with Rogue One. The one thing that I wanna comment on it, I might get a lot of hate from this, but I'm not really a fan of Cassian Andor as a character. I really think, despite the good the good things that could be in Andor, you can check my video on it. I think Cassian is not the heart of the story. Even when he's among the rebellion, or he's like involved in all of this spy shit, I feel like he has never been the heart of the story. Not even in Rogue One. He's always a reflection of other characters. Like he's always reacting to the Skarsgård character, to the Adria Arjona character, to the is it Felicity Jones, like the girl, the lady in Rogue One. He's always like bouncing around it, even to the android. But I never, even after Andor season 2, I never saw him as the heart of the idea behind the character or behind the inspirations for the story. That's just me. I just don't feel that he's the star at all. But anyways, it's good to close the book on Cassian. And well, as soon as I said that, I'm like, man, this is Star Wars. If they can fit a miniseries between this book and Rogue One, they would probably do it. Well, I don't know. Maybe this book finishes at the exact same point where the movie begins, but I don't think it will start where the series ends and end where the movie begins. I don't think that's gonna be the case. So, anyways, just a cute little one shot. Next, we are getting more into the expansion of the Something is Killing the Children universe with a new series by Boom Studios, and Tynion and Tate Brombal are going back to the fall of the House of Slaughter. what can I say? I still love this universe, but I am getting a little bit tired. I, I, I I'm just gonna be straight up honest. To me, the core of Something's Killing the Children was how it felt like this horror movie. It felt like Alien, like Predator. You had Erica, this crazy hero character who was uh, mysterious, but at the same time kind of like extreme, and she had this weird interpretation of ideals of good and justice, and but at the same time the way Welter draw her with those black eyes, it always seemed like the weight of the world was behind her eyes, and she would wear the mask and you would only see her eyes. Like, I haven't slept in forever because I'm absorbed by this duty of killing these monsters, you know, to deal with my trauma. And I'm doomed to fight a silent war that is nowhere to be seen. Like, that really strong emotional core that Something's Killing the Children had. We've been like what, like 5 years into it. I don't know how many books we've had. I don't know how many characters we have. There's the TV series coming up. Like, I don't know. Sometimes world building is good, and I think most of the times it's good. But to me personally, the expansion of the how is it, how is it, the Slaughterverse, the Something is Killing the Children verse? I don't know, but the expansion of the universe itself, to me, it hasn't really scratched the itch that I wanted. It feels a little bit too Games on Thronesy, or like Succession type of this a lot of um, competing characters doing power struggles and conspiring against one another, like almost too political in a sense, and it's been hard to follow. But you are sort of already in it. You're already in it. So well, the fall of the House of Slaughter. Apparently, the big trick about this book is that it's gonna tell of a really important event as part of the universe of the Something is Killing the Children universe. Well, we'll see. Me personally, I'm a bit tired. Next. If Destruction Be Our Lot. It's a new book by Image Comics, written by Matthew Rosenberg, who I personally remember him recently with the whole DC's vampire thing, which I didn't really like. I think it was extremely tropey with the whole apocalyptic scenarios and vampire scenarios, and heroes becoming villains, and like, yeah, Superman is gonna betray you. I don't know, it was extremely tropey as an Elseworlds title. But anyways, this book is like Wally. It's a world in the future where humans are all extinct and robots rule the earth. And this one robot is gonna have a revelation, and he's gonna question the purpose of robotdom. And apparently, it's gonna be another one of these robot books that is gonna make the questions about sentience, um, personhood, and all of those things that often gets challenged when we talk about robots and artificial intelligence, which is basically one of the main topics of our times. So it's always good to me to get more of these Asimovian sort of discussions in any form possible: movies, comic books. It's going to be the topic of our times. So you can either exploit it for a fun ride, which is something good, or you can make more questions about it. You know, as a kind of like as an idea, it's an idea that you've seen plenty of times. It's not that attractive. And I haven't read much about the author. As I said, only that vampire thing, which I think it was tropey. So the only reason I'm recommending it is because it's a new book, and because it's on the subject of robot. What is the name of? I don't remember the whole Asimovian laws of robotic had like a term. But let's call it artificial life questions, which is always a fun sci-fi setting. Fun enough to recommend it. Next. So the Justice Society of America ended the previous story arc with the reintroduction of the spirit. What I want to say about it, what I kind of like feel is exciting about the current run of the Justice Society is that I think that they've been doing this transition, if you can call it. Could you call it a generational transition? Regenerational transition. It could be, but anyways, you need to balance. You need to balance getting the old ones, and I'm sorry, I'm talking about the Spectre, not the Spirit. The Spirit is another one. You need to balance introducing new characters with having the tradition of the old ones. That's kind of like a thing with the Justice Society, that it always goes back to the old characters. And I think Jeff Lemire has done a great work by giving the old guys sort of like an overarching storyline from the past to the present, which is basically based on their old ideas of the group and having it built into the new ones. And the value that they want to transmit from the old GSA to the new one is this concept of family, which I found it to be really endearing. And I think I mentioned it before, the Justice League is like a big corporation or like a big organization, however you want to call it. But the Justice Society is this small group. They are all more closely and tightly related. They have more connections among them. So if you want to update them, you need to preserve some of that. For some of the characters is easy, as for example, you have Green Lantern's children in it, which is sort of like a direct connection. But there's more to it. And I think this new story arc is gonna challenge that sense throughout the search for the Spectre, because the Spectre is this kind of like Play-Doh kind of character. You can mold his story, his power set, and his lore into making some other characters shine. It's no Spectre story is about the Spectre. It's about either the character that is hosting him or whatever it means for in general. So it's pretty interesting. It feels small and cozy as a book, the Justice Society compared to the Justice League. That's how it feels. But that's good. That really is good. Next. So in this tiny, I think it's part of the whole Marvel Voices, where you have like Asian people writing about Asian things. we had this story about Jubilee, Deadly Reunion. I mentioned before how Jubilee was. I felt like it was underused character, and like we haven't really seen a story from her. Even since she became a vampire and everything, she's always kind of like a B or even like a C tier X-Men. She's been kind of like getting down in that area. You always have like characters like Kitty Pryde. They always have their moments to shine. And I think about Kitty Pryde because Kitty Pryde, to me, even though if she has done a lot of interesting stories and important things, she's still kind of like a B tier X-Men, right? She's no Cyclops, she's no Wolverine, and I feel Jubilee used to be around that, but she got pushed away, and now she's probably in like the C D tier. And I'm not talking about tiers about how good or bad the characters are. I'm just talking about them in a sense of importance, or the perceived importance of us as readers. So a solo Jubilee story is cool, and apparently they're like tapping into the whole aspect of family, which I have said a million of times. It's kind of like the thing that I like the most. At the same time, it felt kind of funny that they picked the Asian character to have a random cousin. I don't know. I'm not gonna say anything, but it makes you raise an eyebrow that they chose the Asian character to have a cousin story. Hey, you have an unknown cousin. Sure, man. That's something that doesn't happen, like stereotypically in Asian. But anyways, the whole deal with Jubilee, it had her son, and we haven't seen that in a long time. So bringing her back to the whole family thing, will this catapult Jubilee into a higher tier status? I don't know. At least she's been fun as part of the Uncanny X-Men. That, as I said plenty of times, is my favorite X-Men book ongoing. So, well, who knows, man. At least Jubilee is a great character. I always liked her, not as much as many of the other characters. That's why she's a B tier. But it's okay, man. As I said, you have to recommend it for just taking Jubilee a little bit of giving her a little bit of a spotlight. Plus, I gotta comment. I love the Jubilee's current design. It's pretty good. It's like active. It has her traditional yellow. Was it like a raincoat? I don't know, man. But who knows? Jubilee Daily Reunion next. I've been an open critic of the current Spawn universe books. It's something that I read because I was attached to them when I was a kid, to be honest. But I felt like I keep feeling like the Spawn books are all over the place. There have been a lot of successful Spawn books. I think the Gunslinger Spawn book has done fairly well, but I've read some of the stories and they just feel like generic Spawn stories. We've come to that point of building a new Spawn character. Like the story is always the same. You get a situation where like a demon or someone really bad is exploiting like a weak person. I don't know. Think about slavery or like a sexual thing. Think about something bad and there's someone exploiting them, and then you get this Spawn character that comes and breaks it up. And of course, Spawn characters are not traditional heroes. It's always like there's violence and this some sort of like aggressiveness, some sort of lack of decorum, if you want to call it. And so basically, they follow a pattern. And in the main Spawn universe books, it got like recyclable. Can you say that? So in the current storyline for Spawn, Malebolgia is back and Cogliostro has plans. It seems like just a lot of flair, just a lot of lights to just live in the same moment. As I said before, since Spawn quote unquote ended the war, met again with Wanda, restored the balance, then the portals of Earth got closed, so Heaven and Hell didn't go to war with each other. They went to war with Spawn, and he wanted to destroy whatever, man. I feel like Spawn is all over the place. So this new solo book is about She-Spawn, one of the many Spawns, which personally, I completely forgot about her till they brought her back in the main book, and till they make the Scorched team, which is led by Chispawn. But at the same time, all of these other spawns, as I said, they've been quite trope heavy. But there's one sliver of hope in this new book, because it's written by Gail Simone, which is one of my favorite authors, and the current writer for Uncanny X-Men. It's supposed to be some sort of context or world building for the character of She-Spawn, which is all good and which is all fair, you know. Will it be as trope heavy as the other spawns? Will they give her something new? I have no idea. I'm just happy that she's gonna have her own book, and hopefully it will mean that it will give her a little bit of more of context. And why does she need a little bit more of context than the other spawns? Because she is kind of like the second in command after Al Simmons. It's a really important thing. Like she's literally more important than the other spawns. And if they're gonna give her solo book, like Gunslinger got one before her just because he was popular. So let's see what Gale does with She-Spawn. Let's hope it's funny, interesting, and hopefully it's not as tropey as most of Spawn books nowadays. Next. This is another one that I'm using to do a review of another book. They're releasing a prequel to Sleepy Hollow by IDW Dark. It's a prequel to the movies, and I'm using this opportunity to talk about the previous Sleepy Hollow. I forgot the name, but it was a sequel to the movies. I thought it was okay. The art was amazing, but overall, I didn't really like it that much because it relied too much in the supernatural. The sequel to Sleepy Hollow, it was so supernatural heavy that I thought it was kind of like strange. It had a strange feeling into it, because even though the movie had supernatural elements imbued in it, to me the movie Sleepy Hollow, I haven't read any books or anything. To me the movie was more about this mystery. It was more about the thriller aspects of finding out the secrets behind the town and the secrets behind the Headless Rider. So the sequel laying it too thick on supernatural and mediums and ghosts. Even though it felt like something natural the story could do, it wasn't really what it appealed to me from the original story. As I said, I saw it more original story. I'm saying the movie. It appealed to me more in the sense of a thriller, kind of like mystery story. So now we're gonna get the prequel, and I feel like they're gonna keep going that way, and they're gonna delve more into the supernatural origins of the Headless Rider. Apparently, it's gonna be about the lady, the lady in the movie who does the covenant or the contract with the Headless Rider or something. Apparently, it's gonna be about her and her kind of like desires of power and her tapping into magic and dark arts, which is cool in some way. But as I'm saying, like, it wasn't my the thing that attracted me to the original movie at the beginning. So anyways, this is one for the people who are like really in love with the Sleepy Hollow franchise. I would recommend it only for those kind of people, which I'm not really. I'm not that much of a fan of Sleepy Hollow, but I was a fan enough to read the sequel, which made me mildly interested in a prequel, be it short-lived or not. Next. So we have a like it was so funny. the press release for Storm issue 4 was Storm's daughter is here. Dot. It was huge news before this current run of Storm began. It was the news, and they have been promoting it basically in every X-Men book since the announcement. Finally, Furuha, Storm's daughter, is gonna appear. How epic it's going to be, I'm not sure, because previously the whole thing was Galacta from Marvel Rivals was gonna have her own version in 616, and spoilers, in that book, Galacta is barely in it, and she's not part of the story. Long story short, currently Storm is sort of traveling in the Marvel multiverse, if you want to say it, if we want to call it like that. So she's jumping around Earth, and of course that is an excuse to make her experience some random things, different versions of the characters. And we all know that in the current 616 universe, in the present, Storm does not have a daughter. So of course we're gonna get the backstory of this Furuha daughter. Whether it's an alternate future, an alternate universe, we don't know. But we know enough about how comic books works that if this character has an impact, if it becomes popular, we can see her coming back into the books, whether she's real, whether she is part of the main universe, that doesn't matter. This is an experiment of creating Storm's daughter, and her future is basically depending only on her and the popularity of this book. I am highly interested though. As an X-Men fan, as a Storm fan, she's my main duelist in Marvel Rivals. It's funny because my main duelists in Rivals are Storm and Wolverine. And I think it's gonna be Wolverine. I don't know. I think it's gonna be. It will be too obvious for her possible daughter. As I said, this is could be an alternate universe, an alternate timeline, whatever. The fact remains, is a character that they're gonna introduce as Storm's daughter. So it's gonna be important who the father is. I don't think it's gonna be Black Panther. It will be too obvious. I think it's gonna be Wolverine. So they keep teasing about her having fangs. So, well, imagine it's fucking Blade or something. I don't know, man. Even if it's for the bare mystery of knowing the father, it's important for Storm and X-Men followers to get into the story, because as I said, if this is popular, this is gonna be an important character, timeline or Earth. Like if this character blows up, it's gonna be relevant. Where she comes from, what's her backstory, and what are her implications for Storm herself. You know? Overall, this current story arc for Storm has been fun, but mostly because of the potential of having her traveling to these different places and experiences these kind of like out of the norm characters and context and realities. That's basically it. But of course, the high selling point is Storm's daughter. We'll see how it goes. Next, last but not least, a quick review of the current X-Men storyline. In one word, convenient. The Danger Room storyline had a human kind of like a organization effectively kind of like quote unquote defeating the X-Men. That's the whole thing about it. The mighty X-Men, and again they were facing a human-led organization with power, and the whole thing is they defeated them by exploiting their weaknesses. It's like and I think that the main bad lady, I think she does say so herself, like, we defeated these powerful individuals with only cunning and proper planning. So they set up traps for all of them, and they defeated them. And it just felt like whatever, right? It felt like just another one that this is a stroke of luck, and how they basically emotionally manipulated them by targeting Glove Herman, like the weakest one of them, which was enough. I think that was the perfect hook. Having them almost kill Glove, it was the perfect hook for the rest of the story, which kind of being like really trope heavy, and you kind of see where it's going. But overall, it's been another setup story for whatever plan they have for the beast. We have the two beasts. We have the evil beast still lingering around, and we sort of know that he is the mastermind behind many of the current X-Men woes. So it's been a fun one, but as I said, kind of like how can you say, like, if you have the bad guys, right, they knew exactly what to do. So whenever they face or they set up any of the X-Men characters, you understood immediately how they were gonna do it and how was it gonna go. So the surprises have been low, the stakes have been mid, and the narration, the story on itself has been rather predictable ever since Glove was the kind of like I say emotional startup for the whole thing. So it's another mid kind of like story, and it's building up for something else. They took Cyclops to the side, and in the end, the thing that felt the most is that, like, the X-Men group that it's in the X-Men book, they don't really have like a spice to it. They don't really have a bigger purpose. They don't have the flair that the Uncanny X-Men have. This connecting emotional story based on family, or they don't have this input of new characters to give them a fresh sense. You have like old characters who have not grown for a long time, like Kid Omega, or Beast, even though there's two Beasts, like Magic, it feels more like a stale book with a traditional X-Men story. It hasn't been bad, but it hasn't been the best either. But anyways, let's check out the ending of it and let's see what means for the future. And as I'm running out of voice, I think that is my time. I thought I would extend to, well, I always do like between 10, 12, 14, But I felt like talking about more of this and having a chance to do tiny reviews of these ongoing stories. But anyways, man, it's another week. As always, I'm like a week late. As always, there's a bunch of shit to read. As always, I'm still reading Mistborn. I really want to finish that book, but anytime I sit down to read, I end up reading comic books and not books, which I don't make a distinction on it, but like I really want to finish that book. I really do. It's fun and anything is not that absorbing, but I really do want to finish it. And for the sake of that, I'm gonna leave it there and I'm gonna go read. Thank you as always for listening. I hope you get to read and enjoy the stories that you wanna read and enjoy. They bring you joy, they bring you happiness, and they transport you to these fantastic worlds of fantasy, science fiction, and Storm's daughter, Furuja. It's gonna be Wolverine, mark my words. See you all next week. Take care.